Hey everyone, Vlad here. Today, by request from one of my viewers, I'm going to be showing you how to do a floating starship in Fallout 76. It's quite an involved task, so this is a little bit of a longer video and instructions, but by the end you'll be able to do this yourself without much of an issue. So stick around and we'll get to building. So before we jump into building our starship, there are a couple of concepts I want you to be very familiar with because they're used throughout the build. And the first one is something that's been in the game since it came out, and we call it magical doorways. First person to kind of show this in detail was Jug. He has a channel here on YouTube, so I'll link to him in my description. He has a lot of cool building tips. Some of them are kind of obsolete now due to patches, but this one is still readily available. But if you put a door frame on top of a foundation and keep it to being a door frame, you'll be able to move the foundation from underneath it. Also, if you stack two door frames on top of each other, you can remove the bottom door frame and leave one panel of the wall floating. These can later then be turned back into solid walls with just the replace function of the build menu. When we're doing this, we're going to be using a ton of roofs. So it's good to know what the snap point functions are of the slanted wall. Now they will attach to the bottom of each other once it has been attached to a wall, and it will create this kind of zigzag wavy pattern. So it's good to know that that's where the snap points are for the roofs here. Now another snap point that it belongs to this slanted roof is the ability to put a wall attached to the upper portion, and you can do that even if there is no wall directly underneath that portion of the slanted roof. And we're going to use that to our advantage throughout the entire build. Another thing that you will need to make this build work is you will either need to have the greenhouse roof set unlocked, or you'll need to have the log cabin roof set unlocked. One was a reward for season 1. I think you may be able to get it with gold bullion. I'll have to double check that. And then the log cabin one is purely a atomic shop item. But with these roof sets, you have the ability to take a slanted roof and turn it into a flat roof using the replace function in the build menu. And we're going to use this function to break some snap points in the building. So we're going to take the slanted roof, turn it flat, and notice we've just broken the snap point for that upper wall. It's now floating by itself. And something to note is that essentially these have a pivot point in which they will turn into the slanted roof. So we can change that pivot point by turning around the roof and how we placed it. So if we try and do this and you have that pivot point in the wrong place, just pick up the roof, flip it to the next thing, and get the pivot point where you want it for what we're attempting to do in the build. And this is a very core concept for what we're going to do, so keep that in mind and be familiar with it. Now the first step is we're going to have to build a circle, and we do that by building this plus sign on the ground. Again, this came from Jug and his method of building round houses, but build this plus sign is basically a center foundation and two foundations on the side of each, and then go around and remove the middle foundation, because we're going to want to move these things around, and with that middle one, things are going to want to snap where we don't want them to. So once you've done that, stand on your middle platform, grab your door frame, not a solid wall, but a door frame, and push it to the outside of each one of the foundations. And maintain your position in the center of the circle on that center foundation throughout the entire build. Keep this center foundation in place. It's your go back to point. If you screw up, you move something that you didn't mean to, you accidentally store it instead of putting it back in place, those sort of things, you can go back to your starting point with this center foundation. And what we're going to do is we're going to stay in the center, grab one of our foundations, and we're going to slightly rotate it so that we can place another door frame just barely touching the one beside it. And we're going to have to do this all the way around the circle. Now, when you move your foundations, be very careful. You don't want to change the elevation of it, because if you do, then obviously things aren't going to line up the way you want them to. And this is a very tedious, time-consuming, nerve-wracking task. Some things you're like, it should be perfect, but the game makes things snap in weird ways, so it's not. But you kind of just have to work your way through it. Now, once you do have a full circle, you can blueprint it. I suggest you do once you make one that you're happy with the symmetry on. And then you're smooth sailing moving forward. You can place it down anytime you want. But when you're done, you should end up with a structure like this. We want to make sure that we put foundations on the outside of our structure. We will put things back on the inside at times for things that we're going to do, but having them on the outside means your blueprint will place when you try and do it. And you won't have to worry about things not placing when you try and place your blueprint of the circle later. Now, before we start building the rest of our structure, go ahead and flip the walls inside out for the circle. That's why I moved these foundations to the outside, is because I want to flip these walls. And our actual disc that we put floating in the sky is going to have the wallpaper side of our walls facing out. And so by flipping these, we can get a good idea of what our circle looks like and what it will look like in the air. So if you see gaps like the one in front of me in your wall, then those are things you're going to want to fix before you continue moving on with this build. So I'm just showing this as an example, a way to check your work and understand what things are going to look like before you go through all the extra hassle. Now, we're going to start building our floating structure in the sky. By doing that, we're going to start with the foundation on the interior of the circle, place a door frame on the interior side of that, and then attach a roof to it, an angled roof. And then from our angled roof, use our snap point to put a half wall on it. You could use a full wall if you want a taller point to your spaceship, but it really looks more like a spaceship if you use the half walls. And then we are going to snap some roofs on top. And once we've done that, we're going to remove the one that snaps to the outside. And we should be left with this like Pac-Man shape, but we still have this wall attached to everything, and it won't let us remove it as is. So we're going to use our magical roof set and flip that to being flat, remove our inner wall, and then change it back to angled. And now we have our Pac-Man floating structure with nothing attached to it. Free floating, no walls, nothing attached to it, just that one that's in the sky, but we want that as part of our structure. And what you're going to do is go to every alternating door frame in your circle and build this same structure. So here's another example of what I did, just so you can commit it to memory. I mean, it's a video, you can always rewind. So once you have done that every other wall set, you will end up with what you see in front of you here, a whole bunch of Pac-Man looking at each other. And what we're going to need to do now is fill in those gaps, the walls that we didn't place these on. The problem is that these are too close. We're building inwards in our circle, and so the game thinks that everything's going to collide, because it technically does. So to get around that, we're going to use our trusty flamethrower to destroy the roofs and allow ourselves to place objects that collide. But because those roofs are destroyed, the game doesn't recognize that they're colliding, and it will actually allow you to build those items. So here I'm just doing an example and destroying a couple of things to get them out of the way. And then I'll show you, that we're going to use the same process for getting in these middle half walls and roofs into our structure. So once you have those roofs destroyed, it's the exact same process we used to get the other Pac-Man in place. Except for you're going to have to place a flat roof first instead of an angled roof on the bottom. But once you have the flat roof, you can switch it to the angled. Place your half wall. There we go, half wall in place. And then we have to do the same process we did on the bottom, on the top. We need to destroy the roofs that are going to collide with each other. So you can also take advantage of the fact that things can be laid flat to get yourself a platform up in the sky to work off of and destroy these roofs. And once those are destroyed, we can see that their frame is still there in the build menu, but we can place this roof where it's basically colliding with them. And now we have these 3 roofs, but they are all touching. And once we repair it, you see the little section that is complete there. And then I went ahead and did the exact same process all the way around, same thing we did on the bottom, and you end up with a structure that looks like this. You can see the imperfections from my circle in this, so you can understand that you really do have to take the time to align things up to where they look good, so that you're not wasting your time and that you end up with a result that you like. Now, we have to worry about building in a floor or a roof. You're going to have some way in here, so you're going to need to leave a hole somewhere, but I've gone around and I made half of the roofs that we placed on the bottom angled and the other half flat, and then I destroyed all the angled roofs. And that's because we're going to want to attach some more roofs to them to fill in our circle. So you can see where my destroyed roofs are by the frames in the build menu, those yellow ones. But since they are technically not there according to the game because I destroyed them, it'll allow me to snap these roofs going to the interior that technically collide with them. So we got our first 4, and then we're going to have to do some steps to, I turn them back into angled roofs because angled roofs are easier to destroy than the flat roofs. It takes a lot less effort. So in the interest of time, I just switch them back to angled roofs so that I can later destroy them, because we still have to place these intermittent roofs down. And we can't place them until these ones are destroyed and the game thinks that they are no longer colliding with what we want to place. So this is where things get really tedious, very time consuming, where you have to have a lot of patience. A key tip to remember is that if you store your flamethrower before it breaks, when you place it again, it'll have full health. So you can save yourself some resources by doing that. And storing it every once in a while so that you aren't constantly having to repair it. But you're going to continue this whole process until you've got the entire floor filled in. Here's like a midway point, but we're still missing our every other wall. So I'm going to do the whole process again by placing roofs, destroying them, changing them back to being angled or flat as need be. And in the end, it will pay off. And you'll get the result that you see here. This is it. I have the floor completed, and I decided not to do the entire upper roof because I'm building in a workshop, and that would just be a waste of time. This core concept is exactly the same for the roof as it is for the floor. You get this really cool pattern on the bottom. As long as you line it up, it'll be nice and pretty symmetrical for you. But you get a really cool look with this. I'm sure you've probably run across some in the Wasteland as you travel to different camps for your vending. And this is how you can do it and achieve that floating saucer look to the camp. And there's really a lot of space inside of here. You can do a lot of different things with it. So that's the core concept. Hopefully it helps you out with your build. Remember to have a lot of patience with it. Remember to work hard at getting your circle as perfect as possible. It's never going to be exactly perfect, but if you want things to look good, it's going to have to take that into account. You're going to have to spend the time with it. But you can do this concept and do a lot of different things with it, even if you don't make a round structure using the roofs trick. You can do a lot of different things with your camp. So don't forget to check out the rest of the channel. I have a lot of other building videos and tips with that type of thing, so check those out, and I'll catch you around next time. Thanks for watching.